Good evening. I'd like to call this meeting to order. If you would all rise with me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Ms. Posey, would you call the roll?
Yes, Madam Supervisor. Trustee Bussino?
Here.
Trustee Krzminski?
Here.
Trustee Nevers?
Present.
Trustee Smith?
Here.
Treasurer Goodhue?
Here.
Clerk Posey here. Supervisor Dunn?
Here.
All members are present.
Thank you. Now we come to the approval of the agenda. And Ms. Posey, we have some changes.
Actually, we have one proposed add-on. It would be numbered as 27A under Human Resources, to authorize the Human Resources Department to post the senior appraiser position pursuant to Article 16, Section 3A of the agreement between Township of Macomb and MAPE and MTPEA. Also, we just moved 2 public hearings to items number 13 and 14.
Thank you. Anyone else have anything for the agenda?
Hearing none, I'll make a motion to approve the agenda as amended.
Motion by Ms. Posey.
Support.
Supported by
Goodhue.
Ms. Goodhue to approve the amended agenda. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed by saying nay. That motion carries. As usual, there are 2 bill runs. If anyone wishes an item removed, please indicate so at this time.
Madam Chair, if there are no issues with either bill runs, I move that we approve both.
Motion by Ms. Nevers.
Support.
Supported by Ms. Goodhue to authorize payment of both bill runs. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed by saying nay. Motion carries. Next, we have approval of the meeting minutes from July 24th. Are there any additions, deletions, or corrections?
Madam Chair, I'll make a motion that we approve the previous meeting minutes of July 24th, 2019 as presented.
Motion by Ms. Goodhue,
Second.
seconded by Ms. Posey to approve the minutes from July 24th. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed by saying nay. That motion carries. Thank you. The consent agenda items are routine matters that come before the board frequently. If anyone wishes to discuss an item on the consent, please indicate so at this time.
Madam Chair, hearing no objection, I move to approve the consent agenda items as presented.
Motion by Mr. Krzminski,
Support.
supported by Ms. Goodhue to approve the consent agenda. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed by saying nay. That motion carries. Next, we have public comments. This is on agenda items only. If you wish to address the board on an agenda item, please come to the podium, state your name, and remember there's a 3-minute time limit.
Paul Jury, address is on file in the clerk's office. General comment, and Christie, this may be going towards you more, mainly that you do the notes and the agenda. I'd like to, if it's possible, on the agenda items, example 10, E, F, G, 16, 17, and 18, if you could maybe put the dollar amounts on the agenda items. You always post them on the minutes after the meeting, but if they could go on the agenda items on what you're voting on for the dollar amounts, make more sense for us when we're sitting in the audience. It's just a general comment. The main thing is on item number 12, I'm hoping for a positive resolution to this, and that the position of HR General Counsel is voted on and eliminated. Being that we're hiring a manager for HR, I don't think we need 2 people in it. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Hi, Chris Howes, West Creek. I'm talking about the pickleball, basically item number 25. Again, we see this is being put off again. You have 90 acres here at Macomb Corners Park. You're using a third. You have 60 acres. Why can't we have pickleball there? You have bathrooms, you have parking. Why can't we use the skating rink? That's been discussed. To paint the lines and let us use that. Give us a storage space to put the portable nets in. It's the fastest growing sport in the country. You've got a lot of people that play pickleball in Macomb Township. Shelby Township has courts. Washington has courts. Clinton has courts. Why can't Macomb have courts? Why does this again need to be put off again for 2 more years? First of all, it's a senior sport and we're all getting a little older. So we'd like to play before we die in the city we live in. So, thank you.
Anyone else?
Good evening. My name is Kathy Western. I'm speaking to items 11 and 12. The Human Resources Director would seem to be the person responsible for assuring all HR policies are comprehensive and up to date. Yet with number 11, we have a trustee who's initiated the update of a policy. I'm hoping that we don't have to divide up the rest of the policies amongst the other trustees to get them to be updated. The attendance policy is 16 years old. The EEO policy is 15 years old. The Family Medical Leave Act policy is 10 years old. And the emergency evacuation policy still has Michael Kay's name on it as a person you should be contacting in the event of an emergency. The only HR director's signature on those policies is that of John Brogowitz, long since retired. Why do none of the employee policies contain Tom Assorti's signature? Why did he remove all of the organizational charts from the township website 2 years ago and failed to restore them? Rather than having the trustees feel they have no choice than to micromanage him, why aren't you establishing performance goals and evaluating him annually as spelled out in the contract? Remember, it was Tom Assorti who told you that you did not need a full-time HR person, making his contract a special way to save money, and yet, miraculously, another trustee, a couple of meetings ago, came up with the idea to hire a full-time helper for him to do his HR work. One of Mr. Assorti's personal attorneys was recently quoted in the Macomb Township Chronicle as saying that Mr. Assorti is an employee, just like any other employee. Now that is a dubious statement. No other employee was awarded a just cause contract with no end date, was permitted to start without a pre-employment physical, drug screen, or psychiatric eval. I expect you would not tolerate any other employee announcing during an open meeting his intention to be insubordinate if you voted a particular way, as Mr. Assorti did 2 meetings ago. So on item 12, if you do hire a full-time HR manager, of course you should dissolve that contract and do it over again. But I did notice that today the position has still not been posted on the township website. I don't know if that is just a matter of undone work that somebody couldn't get to, or did it turn out that Merck was right and to add another non-union position to that department would be a violation? Let us know when you get to that item. Thank you.
Anyone else? Very well, we will move then to unfinished business, and number 11 is the Anti-Discrimination Policy. Ms. Smith?
Madam Chair, thank you, and thank you for the postponement on this. I did talk to Mr. Assorti, and I haven't heard back from Mr. Assorti, so I think he's good with it too. I don't know if any of the other board members had any questions, or if they're okay with the policy to vote on that. Any other trustees have questions regarding the policy?
No, I
Can I
don't
make a
think so.
motion to enforce this new policy?
Support.
Is that a motion?
Yes, please.
Okay. Motion by Ms. Smith,
Support.
supported by Mr. Buzzano, to approve the anti-discrimination policy as submitted. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed by saying nay. That motion carries. Next, we have discussion and vote to dissolve the position of HR General Counsel. Mr. Buzzano, this was your request.
Yes, Madam Chair, last meeting I gave a pretty detailed speech and reasoning on why I wanted, I'm going to back up, why our community needs this position to be dissolved, to move forward. At that point, Ms. Smith did make a motion to table it. She was looking for some information, so I think that information kind of came through a little bit to us, and maybe Ms. Smith wants to talk about, I don't know if you want to talk about it now at this point. I mean, I really don't have much more to say. I pretty much put it on the record last meeting why I think this position should be dissolved. I think it's going to keep us out of harm's way. We did receive some information as trustees that was, to me, it was a little confusing as I read through it, because some statements that were made about whether or not the union was going to proceed with challenging the position was unclear to me. I know what an email stated and I know what a letter stated after, but did any of that clear anything up for you, Ms. Smith, as far as voting on this? Or I know we talked about this too, so.
And all I want to know, is there a Merck issue? That's all I want to know.
Well, after trying to meet with AFSCME and being assured that there was a Merck ruling, I asked for it again, didn't receive it. I contacted Merck. Merck informed me that there was no such ruling. I went back, I contacted the old law firm that I was at because they had done research for Mr. Brogowitz regarding the status of AFSCME at the time, determined that there was no such ruling. And then I received a letter that I circulated with all of you from the union, from AFSCME, indicating that they had also contacted Merck despite the statements that were made at this board meeting, and there is no such ruling. So I'm waiting to meet with them, as would be the normal course, to discuss if it's a common practice when when an employee position is presented and there's a confidentiality issue, whether or not they belong in the bargaining agreement. If it's the employer has certain responsibilities, and if the union has an issue with it, they can certainly contact us and negotiate, and I'm waiting for that to be done.
Okay, so if we do, so we are going to hire this HR manager that was already approved. If we hire this person and we find out that there is a Merck issue, what happens then?
I have no plans of hiring until I get it resolved with
Okay.
the union.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else?
Madam Chair, since there's no vote or anything else, I move that we move on to the next item.
Is that a motion?
Yes, ma'am.
I'm sorry, Mr. Bussano, are you?
No, Madam Chair, I would like to make a motion. I'm sorry, I would like to make a motion as a continuance from last meeting, under unfinished business, under item 12, to vote to dissolve the position of HR General Counsel.
Mr. Bussano, Mr. Assorti, if they come back and they say that there's an issue with Merck, are we not going to hire this person? I know there's not a person there right now, but.
Madam Chair, if I may, all we're doing on this one has got nothing to do with on Merck.
But she's
This
asking
is just-
questions during the discussion.
I know that. All I'm saying is point of information on this is that this discussion is whether or not Mr. Bussano has put something on the table here to see whether or not to dissolve the position. Now, he needs a second. If he doesn't get a second, then we move on. The Merck item is something completely different than this. That's how I see it.
The Merck item is because you brought to the table to hire an HR manager,
That's true.
right?
That's true.
And we
What
believe.
has that got to do with
We
this?
believe
Mr.
that
Busnell?
we
What has it
believe
got
that
this-
that
with this?
violates a contract with the union, that no more than 2 people in the HR department can be non-union. This would add a third. So if we bring on the HR manager, I think it gives even more credence to dissolve this position of HR general counsel.
Madam Chair, Mr. Assorti has already said that he contacted the union and he has contacted Merck. There's no such stipulation. Okay? So I think we should move on.
Mr. Assorti just said he wasn't sure.
Hey, to be clear, I contacted Merck, was advised there is no such ruling. I did the research to determine there was no such ruling. I have a letter which I gave to the entire board that indicates the union contacted Merck and were advised that there is no such ruling.
Madam Chair, if I may, I understand the discussion with regards to the Merck issue. If we're gonna hire an HR manager, then potentially we did not need an HR/general counsel position. In addition to all of that, the discussion that should be had about this position in existence is it working? It's been brought to our attention by numerous people and employees that the quality of services that they're getting from HR are not up to par. It was just indicated a majority of our policies are not updated. It feels that there's lacking HR work or responsibilities in that position. So is it working? Is it just a bad decision that was made? I believe that that's what you should consider when you vote in this, is the way it is right now, based on everything we've heard in the last 6 months, working with this position. So I support Mr. Bostano's motion to dissolve the position of HR General Counsel.
Madam Chair, if I may. First of all, Mr. Assorti did not seek out this dual position. He was asked to both consider and accept these dual responsibilities. He gave up a successful 25-year legal practice to take this on. He climbed out on a limb for this township and needed to protect himself by virtue of a contract. Now, I went to the Webster Dictionary and it said, a contract is an agreement between 2 or more parties, especially one that is written and enforceable by law. Second, our township continues to grow exponentially. I have not heard that any developer intends to discontinue work in Macomb Township. In fact, I have heard just the opposite. So that tells me there's no problem with the interaction by Mr. Assorti, by contractors, developers, which is key. And then 3, every collective bargaining agreement that has become subject to renewal while Mr. Assorti has been with the township has been successfully bargained and implemented with no finding of improper or unfair practices by either party. Furthermore, I believe it is my understanding that there have been fewer grievances filed since Mr. Assorti has been handling negotiations. Now, I realize there was a grievance filed by one of the employees, and an investigation went out from a lawyer that Ms. Smith suggested, and I do have a copy of it in my possession. I believe we all got it. I would love to be able to share it, but I cannot because it's both personal and confidential and attorney-client privileged. So those are my statements. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Bostano, and correct me if I'm wrong, at the last meeting, it was either we wanted to switch from HR to do HR or legal, correct? Not to dissolve the whole position, correct? Am I wrong? It's one or the other?
What I'm looking for is, my communication originally with the board was to dissolve the position of HR General Counsel, then this board go back and negotiate a General Counsel position with this township. So then we would have an HR director or a manager, depending on how we go forward, and then a General Counsel, which would, I'm talking about positions, not people. And I think this position of HR General Counsel has created a lot of division among employees, a lot of division in our township. So there have been things we've done since I've been on this board that have been very positive moving forward. And I think this would be another positive step to separate these two positions, not the person, renegotiate a general counsel position for township and hire an HR director, which we've already taken steps with by having an HR manager that could step into the HR director position.
So
Does that make sense, what I'm saying?
it does, but is this moot right now then, to make this decision, when we don't know if we are gonna go with an HR manager or not?
We could dissolve the position tonight, negotiate a general counsel position, move forward with an HR director, because if that position now is in, if the general counsel is separated, there's no more Merck issue. So we can hire the HR manager tomorrow because this board's already taken action to do that. And the compensation package that we would offer anybody coming in as an HR manager is I think is quite attractive, you know.
Do we want an HR manager or do we want an HR director?
We could make that HR manager HR director. I think we need a qualified person in the HR department to take care of employee needs and to change the culture in town hall.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
HR, who do you think an HR director represents, Mr. Bussino?
I think that an HR director should create a culture where employees feel welcome, that they understand that laws are being followed, that they're not going to come into an environment where the culture is toxic, where they do not feel intimidated, harassed on a daily basis, where they don't feel scared. If they do feel that, you know, at my place of employment, the HR department is a very, very comfortable place to enter. From what I've heard, we don't have that right now. And we've had situations where that has led to legal proceedings where the same HR director got to appoint people legally, you know, under his contract, he gets to, that position gets to appoint legal counsel to address some mistakes they may have made as HR director.
Madam Chair, if I may, just to clarify something, Mr. Bussino, I think legal has said that the Merck agreement, there is none. It has not, there is nothing that is produced. I think you got that, didn't you, Mr. Bussino? He said, the union, he's waiting on the union to come forward and to negotiate that. So there is no such thing of having two people there. There is nothing. Nothing that Merck has. So whatever the union has told us is wrong. Now, he has researched it, and he has said, this is what it is. So that's all I'm telling you,
Mr. Krasinski,
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Madam Chair, Mr. Krasinski, long before you suggested an HR manager, there's been issues with this HR general counsel, pretty much from the beginning. And, you know, I'm still looking for communities that are growing like us that have that dual position. And, you know, this is not about a person, this is about a position. We have an opportunity here in this vote to separate these positions, still keep a person that, you know, at least our supervisor and Ms. Goodhue on a daily basis, and I don't know about, you know, I guess the full-time people, you know, have to work on a daily basis, can still work with that person, renegotiate a general counsel. You know, I never forget that the contract that was placed in front of me, this contract that has become controversial, was given to me about 3 o'clock in the day that we had to vote. I voted no. I don't know. The controversy about the HR general counsel started long before the Merck situation with HR manager.
Madam Chair, if I may, I would like to read this again. every collective bargaining agreement that has become subject to renewal while Mr. Assorti has been with the township has been successfully bargained and implemented with no finding of improper or unfair practices by either party. My suggestion with this whole kerfuffle is that Mr. Assorti has been so effective with his bargaining and his negotiating skills that the union is upset with it and they want him gone. That's my opinion, and I can be challenged by that if you want to see me after the meeting, but that's my opinion. Thank you.
Madam Chair, I just want to express my thoughts on this. I think there is a conflict for one person to do both of those jobs. I think there is a conflict. I think an HR director is to make decisions that may have to be litigated. I think an HR director should be separate from that process. I think the HR should be a place for internal HR employees to have someone to default to. I'm not here for someone to lose their job. I think Mr. Assorti does a very good job for us in legal, but my personal opinion is I think it's okay to separate the two jobs. That's my personal opinion. I do think there's a conflict, and
Madam Chair,
Yes.
there are always going to be conflicts perceived, and there's always going to be controversy. It's the name of the game. This is what we do. We handle this all the time. I need to have facts in order to break a contract that we have. We've never broken a contract as far as I know ever. We don't destroy unions. We don't try to get rid of them so that's a contract as well. I need to have facts in order to take and dissolve a contract.
I think Madam Chair, I'm sorry. I think if we have an HR manager, HR director, and Mr. Assorti, we're getting what we need that way.
Anyone else?
Yes, Madam Chair, as far as facts, if you've sat up on this board and don't have your facts now, you've ignored emails, you ignored discussions in closed session, you've ignored letters from planning directors, you've ignored a lot of facts. To tell me there's no facts on the table about the conflict of interest right now is, okay.
Madam Chair, if I may add, I think it's important that we pay attention again to the responsibilities of both the positions. If in fact, by combining them, it's too overwhelming for one person to do the responsibilities of both of these positions in a township of our size, are things being overlooked? Is it costing the township money at the end of the day for things that are missed, not done timely, effectively? Simple things get overlooked, and I believe it's because two people are trying to do the job, or one person's trying to do the job of two people. I believe we need general counsel, and I believe we need someone in an HR position to manage this township effectively. No one's saying Tom Assorti is to be dissolved. We're asking that this combined position be dissolved, and then look at the opportunity to have general counsel do general counsel, focus all their efforts on the legalities of this township, and HR focus on policies that are obviously not updated and being followed through on, canceling insurance policies when people actually resign and not letting them go on for 2 and 3 months before they actually get terminated. These things all cost the township money, whether or not in retrospect it gets back to the township. It's just things that need to be getting done. Even our application process is outdated. There's things that can be worked on. It's just a matter of getting somebody in the position that can move along with the township. That's all I have to say.
Madam Chair, I have one more. The last time we put this position out to bid, or out to hire, we had a hard time getting somebody to fill the position. And that's why Mr. Assorti was asked to fill in. I would say we need to wait to see what kind of applications we get for the HR manager.
I have to agree with Ms. Goodhue. I think until we get the HR manager question resolved, that we have to wait because we'll be without either or.
I think there's a motion and support on the floor right now, to be honest.
Can we do a roll call vote, Madam Chair? Can we do a roll call vote, please?
And Madam Chair, could the motion be restated, please?
Good point.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
I still would like to continue with discussion based on a few of the comments that were just made. It's been continuously brought up that when this HR position was posted last time, they had a hard time filling the position. I've seen some of the applications and applicants that did apply, and I believe their qualifications were exceptional and could have filled the position without hesitation. So I disagree with that statement. You can proceed with your motion.
I was not on the board at the time. I think when people applied, wasn't it 63 applicants we had that applied for the position, 67, something like that?
Madam Chair, can you call the vote, please? Roll call vote.
There was a motion
discussion
by
is ended.
Mr. Buzzano, supported by Ms. Posey.
Correct. And to restate,
Please.
Well, I made the motion to vote to dissolve the position of HR General Counsel.
I second it.
Right.
Roll call
Ms.
vote
Posey,
is
would you call the roll?
Trustee Bussino,
Yes?
Clerk Posey, yes. Trustee Krzminski,
no.
Trustee Nevers.
No.
Trustee Smith.
Yes.
Treasurer Goodhue,
No.
and Supervisor Dunn.
No. Motion fails. We will move on now to new business, and the item from the supervisor's office is a request to negotiate an interim agreement with the planning consultant.
Do the two
You gotta do the public hearings.
public hearings in 13 and
13 and 14.
we move those.
Okay.
This one.
Sorry, let's back up a minute here.
These two right here.
Public hearing and resolution adoption for street lighting, special assessment district for Wolverine Country Club Estates, Phase 1. I will open the public hearing. It is 7:35. Comments from the board or questions for Mr. Van Tifflin? This is a standard agreement.
This is actually correcting some errors that were in the original resolutions that the board saw. The board saw a resolution for this particular item. It was never properly recorded, at least that we can find record of. So what we're doing is we worked with legal counsel to draft the appropriate resolution so that the property owners are being charged the correct amount.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Chair, if I may, this is just more or less an administrative item that we're working on. Is that correct?
Yes, but we had to notify the public that we were doing it, yes.
Okay, fine. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
And it is a resolution.
Correct.
Okay.
So you want to close the public hearing?
Yeah, anybody from the audience wish to speak on this? Very well, I will then close the public hearing. It is 7:36. And are there any motions?
Madam Chair, I'll make a motion to adopt the resolution for street lighting special assessment district for Wolverine Country Club Estates Phase 1.
I'll
Motion
support
by
that.
Ms. Posey, seconded by Mr. Krzminski. Ms. Posey, would you call the roll?
Yes, Madam Chair. Clerk Posey, yes. Trustee Krzminski,
Yes.
Trustee Bussino,
Yes?
Trustee Nevers.
Yes.
Trustee Smith.
Yes.
Treasurer Goodhue.
Yes.
Supervisor Dunn.
Yes. Resolution is adopted. The next one is a special assessment for street lighting for Wolverine Country Club Estates Phase 2. Mr. Van Tifflin?
Open the hearing.
Open the public hearing. It is 7:38. Anything, Mr. Van Tifflin?
This is very similar to the last one, but in this case, there was a resolution that was recorded. However, the issue was the unit numbers were not correct in that resolution. So this new resolution corrects the unit numbers from the original resolution.
Okay, thank you. Any,
Madam Chair, Frank Kuzma, 16188 Jenny Drive. I've come before the board on numerous occasions to discuss the street lighting, the municipal street lighting that's run through the township, through these special tax districts. I'm just going to briefly review the history. I did some research for my subdivision, Ultimate Farm subdivision, in order to transform our street lighting to LED lighting in order to save money. We spend more money on street lighting, approximately twice as much as we do to run our entire association. It again shows up on our taxes. What I came to find out was that the Michigan Public Service Commission, if you put an LED bulb on the top of that pole, charges 5 times the rate on their tariff schedule as a high-pressure sodium bulb. So I made the comment years ago, and I will continue to this day, to make the comment that another alternative option should be given to the subdivisions, that the subdivision association be able to contract its own street lighting rather than running it through the township, because DT Energy gets real nasty and says, well, we'll tear up all the poles and you can put your own street lighting in, and you're not our customer, the township is our customer. Mike Keys, when I contacted him about this years ago, said, well, we'll agree, whatever you guys can work out, whatever's beneficial for your subdivision we'd probably be agreeable to it. He didn't speak for the entire board because he wasn't able to. But the point I'm making is that an alternative and a creative solution should come to this board for determining whether or not a special tax district is the only way for subdivisions and homeowners associations to get affordable, economical street lighting, or whether or not it's going to be a monopoly, which I will discuss in further detail on my general comments later this evening. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Madam Chair, if I may. Mr. Van Tifflin, has what Mr. Cusimano suggested ever been considered, reviewed, researched?
We have discussed the possibility of each subdivision contracting separately with DTE. The township wouldn't necessarily object to getting out of the street lighting business. The trouble that we have with that is, what if they don't pay their bill? What happens? Our ordinance says there must be street lighting in all of the subdivisions. So if they don't pay their bill, what is the mechanism for the township to then step in and charge the property owners? We'd have to do something like what we're talking about here. So if we could work that out, then it might be a possibility, but we haven't been able to work that out yet.
Thank you.
Just, Madam Chair, if I may, just to follow up to that, Jim, if we did allow the subs to do that, and I agree with you as far as their taxes or them paying the bills, and that is kind of funny that some of them wouldn't pay that bill because of it being there. And I can't see why, to me, the way we're doing it right now is the correct way of doing it, through us handling it and doing that way, the way we're doing it through our ordinance.
A platted subdivision doesn't have to have an association. Many do, but we also run into situations in the township where there is no active associations. If it's a site condominium, that's a separate matter. They must have an association. But, a subdivision could have an active association today, and they could dissolve tomorrow, and, now nobody's paying the bill. It's a similar situation to the landscaping out front. We've all driven down the major roads and seen some of the landscape areas that aren't being kept up, and that's because there's no active association, and it ends up falling on a property owner who lives next door.
Thank you, Mr. Van Tifflin. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Madam Chair, as the treasurer, I can see how many people don't pay their water bill and it gets transferred to taxes. So I can imagine a street lighting bill that they just kind of take for granted, that wouldn't get paid either. So I think this is a correct way to do it also. Thank
Madam
you.
Chair, if I may, just to follow up to the treasurer, I think the last time that we talked about it, there was well over $1 million that we're paying for some people that are not paying their water bills and putting it onto the taxes. And we've also talked about is that those people that are putting it onto the taxes are already falsifying their information when it comes to IRS, because it's not supposed to be on there. So it's an issue. So if we had to add whatever the lights are in these subs, that'd be another $1 million or $2 or $3. I don't know what that number is, But I do know the number that you're coming up with of $1 million that we are paying now because of the people not paying their water bills. That's all I have to say. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Very well. Are there any motions?
Madam Chair, you want to close the public hearing?
Oh, I'm sorry, you're right. I'll close the public hearing. It is now 7:42. Are there any motions?
Madam Chair, if there's no further discussion, I would move to adopt the street lighting assessment as presented.
Motion by Mr. Krasinski. Support. Supported by Ms. Goodhue. Ms. Posey, would you call the roll?
Yes, Madam Supervisor. Trustee Krasinski?
Yes.
Treasurer Goodhue?
Yes.
Trustee Bussino?
Yes.
Trustee Nevers?
Yes.
Trustee Smith?
Yes.
Clerk Posey, yes, and Supervisor Dunn.
Yes. Thank you. This resolution is adopted. Next on the agenda is a request to negotiate an interim agreement with the planning consultant. Here's my letter. Thank you. The position of the planning director has been advertised. It was opened on April 30th, 2019. After receiving a less than desirable response to the job posting, the position was continued through August 16th. The township has only received 2 applications to date. The position is and has been advertised with MML, LinkedIn, American Planning Association, Michigan Association of Planning, and the Planning and Zoning News. The current arrangement with the prior planning director is allowing the township to continue its obligations to the public. Many larger projects, including development of the master plan, still need to be addressed. There are a limited number of consultants familiar with local planning history and ideals. Approval will allow the supervisor to negotiate with appropriate consultants to assure that the township's long-term planning needs are addressed while the township fills the position or otherwise restructures to meet demands. Any negotiated agreement would be subject to board approval. I would request that you authorize the supervisor to negotiate an interim agreement with the planning consultant on behalf of the township. Any questions?
Yes, Madam Chair. Got a couple questions on a couple pieces of communication that we've received. First of all, you just read that the position was continued through August 16th. Today is August 14th.
Well, that's how long the listing lasts.
So, okay, so when did we cut people off from applying?
I'm sorry?
You said that the listing for the position was through August 16th, 2019. Today's August 14th.
Got 2 more days to run.
Okay, so, okay, we just talked about a couple of minutes ago about waiting on HR manager applications, so anyway. But something else I want to ask about is on April 24th, 2019, we got a letter from our HR general counsel that in response to Mr. Mahar's resignation, and the last line in the letter said, "My office has already received communication from parties interested in this attractive position." Now, your letter is saying that we're receiving a less than desirable response to the job posting. So what happened from April 24, 2019, when our HR director said that he was receiving, again, quote, communication from parties interested in this attractive position, then on August 5th, your communication with the board was that we're receiving a less than desirable response. What happened to those responses from April 24th, 2019, from our general counsel in response to Mr. Mahar? You know, was that just lip service to Mr. Mahar's letter? Or what happened between the 2 dates that there was a overwhelming response to fill Mr. Mahar's position, but now a letter from you, now there's not? What do you think happened between April, and August.
Mr. Sordy?
I was asking you, Madam Supervisor, but, because the letter came from you that said that receiving a less than desirable response. But Mr. Sordy can answer, because I am interested, because his letter on April 24th in response to Mr. Mahar, very controversial letter that talked about the culture at Town Hall that we just talked about, you said your office already received communication from parties interested in this attractive position. Was that just a line in a letter to undercut a former employee?
Most of the time, Mr. Busno, the replies that we got were hearsay. We heard that Mr. Maher was resigning, so we thought we would offer you our services. They were from consultants rather than individuals. We only got 2 individuals that applied that are planning consultants on their own, that do not belong to a group. I don't think 2 is enough of a pool to interview.
So on April 24th, when the office, this is signed by Mr. Sordy, this isn't hearsay, it's signed by Mr. Sordy, it says, my office already has received communications from parties interested in this attractive position. So you're telling me those were just consultants?
I believe so.
That were consultants that were ready to fill that void of Mr. Maher?
Mr. Sordy, can you answer?
Sure. My letter indicates that I received several communications, which is completely accurate. I did receive several communications, 2 from planners in other communities that contacted me directly. I contacted them directly about this position. They indicated to me they were not interested in filing for the position. So I think that there's no inconsistencies in what was said. At the time that went out, I did receive several calls regarding interest. Those individuals, for whatever reason, have chosen not to apply for the position, which is what the agenda item information suggests.
But we have a consulting firm in mind. So we have a consulting firm that most definitely wants to fill that void, but no individual applicants.
Madam Chair, if I may, pardon me, Mr. Bussenau, in my discussion with Mr. Van Tiffelen, asking about the need for a planner, and this has been a super critical thing. And he indicated, and correct me if I'm wrong, Jim, that there was no one out there that could fill Pat's shoes. And that there were people, I guess maybe let me clarify. There were people out there, but not anyone would want to leave what they had to come here to do the job. Okay, so hence my vote to have Mr. Maher, even though he threw a match into the township, ignited things and left, I voted for the township's best interest to bring him back and allow him to do the work of planning so that there was no hiccup between what went on with planning and building. And so that being said, and that was right from somebody with whom I have the ultimate respect on something as key as planning, and therein lies the rub. People that are out there, and I believe he even said he'd almost want somebody right out of school who was trained as a planner that he could take through the steps one by one. Am I right there, Jim? Was it you, or maybe it was another person that
We
I
might
saw?
have a few things confused here.
Okay, continue.
I was walking us down the process that I thought we should go through. We had a meeting on May 10th, I think it was. The supervisor, HR general counsel, as well as the building director and I, to discuss what we were going to do. At that point, we had already had a request for resumes, applicants out in a couple of different places. I had gotten with Mr. Maher and made a couple of additional recommendations. But what we had agreed to at that point was we would continue on with Mr. Maher until at least we had an opportunity to get applicants in. And then we would see what the quality of the applicants were, how many we got, were these people that we wanted to perhaps contract with or hire on. If we weren't going to get those types of applicants, then the township could make a decision to continue on, which is what we did at the end of June. I think we continued on for another a month and a half. Or we decided that we're going to go for a proposal for a planning consultant to come in. And whether that is for 6 months or a year until we can find somebody, or we make the decision that we're not going to have planning in-house anymore, which is, I don't think anybody wants. But then that would be the permanent consultant. And that's what we've been doing to this point. Now, I wasn't aware that this was going to go onto the agenda until it was on the agenda. So I'm a little bit surprised that we are heading this way. But if we are going to get a consultant in here, I would recommend that we prepare a proposal. I think we have a purchasing specialist coming in, correct? Mm-hmm. When that person comes in, we can have them prepare an RFP, send it out, and have all the consultants that want to apply, apply. And then we can interview them. The board can set up a committee, we can interview them, and that way we're bringing in somebody that everybody's in agreement with. And then we can make a decision, what do we want to do with that position, whether it's, but I think we need to make the decision, are we going to continue to hire, look for somebody that we're going to hire for that position? And we also had a discussion about what we wanted to do with the planning manager position, whether that would be handled as an in-house position or perhaps as a consultant. Because, way I work is I do have an engineering manager in-house. We have a lot of work, but I also have 2 consultants that work with me. So I can farm that work out, but internally we're making those decisions. So something like that could be set up. And you could also have somebody as a very young entry-level planner come in and fill some of that, who you can train into that spot. So there are a number of different things that you can do. But again, it was part of a bigger process.
Right. Thank you for clarifying that. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Madam Chair, since there's been some latitude to talk to Mr. Van Tiffelen on this, my original question was to you. So in our township, I think it's fair enough, and if I'm putting you on the spot too much, I'll back off, but it's fair enough that, it's an attractive position. I think there's going to be a lot of planning for many years to come. I do believe we give good wages, good benefits. Do you know any reason why why we're not getting applications right now? I mean, can you think of anything or?
All I can say to something like that is, I can relate it to engineering. Right now, we're all in high demand.
Okay.
And a lot of people have changed jobs already. So it may not be getting to the right people. In order to go to some of these, in order to get somebody from some of these websites, they have to go and look. And I know that I get emails all the time from different organizations, in the Midwest, looking for a DPW director, a public service director, a city engineer, and they're basically headhunter type organizations that the local government hires them, and they go out and it's an email broadcast to every professional engineer that's in the state of Michigan, or every licensed planner in the state of Michigan, so that at least we've been in front of them. I had a conversation with Mr. Assorti a few weeks ago about possibly doing something like that here that might attract somebody to a position like that who's not necessarily looking, because they're really busy. They're working 10, 12 hours a day, and they don't have time to go onto the Michigan Association of Planner website and look for a job. So there might be some additional opportunities to do something like that in the interim. I have talked to Mr. Mahar, and I think he's here tonight. He is willing to continue on if we want to continue that that process. We just need to decide what it is that the board needs to decide what it is that we want to do.
And I just want to follow up with one more question on the comment that you had made. You said it until this agenda item was put on, you were kind of surprised, I'm paraphrasing, not quoting, you were kind of surprised this agenda item was put on. So it's safe to say that you have had no input about a future consultant. So if a consultant's already been picked, you haven't been
I've had discussions with General Counsel, HR Director, as well as the Supervisor about this possibility that we aren't finding applicants. And what do we do then? We've had some discussions about how to restructure the department using a consultant to supplement staff internal. So I have had some of those discussions, but this particular thing about just, going out and finding somebody at this point, I was not part of that discussion, no.
Thank you. Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay.
Mr. Van Tifflin, could you please just reiterate what you said about getting the purchasing specialist? What was your idea with that?
So the purchasing specialist could put together an RFP, a request for proposal, for planning consulting services. So in there would list all the duties that we would expect that consultant to handle, what their qualifications must be. We would get, what their experience is, resumes from employees, all those types of things would be included in a proposal that would be submitted to the township. And hopefully we would, get several of these that we'd be able to review and then narrow down to maybe 2 or 3 that we would want to interview and then decide, which one we would want to go with.
Okay, thank you.
And typically those contracts do have a clause in them that either have 30 days or 60 days that you can get out of them. So if it wasn't working out, you could get out of it. Also, if we decided we were going to have somebody in-house, we could also make that change as well. So it would give us some options.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Chair, if I may. I'd like to just review some facts that have been indicated this evening that seem to not substantiate some of the things that have been said. It's been mentioned tonight that Mr. Maher was voted to be brought back to the township to be as the planner in the interim. Your letter indicates the current arrangement with the prior planning director is allowing the township to continue its obligations to the public, and there's been mention of an agreement with Mr. Maher. Is there a signed agreement with the township right now with regards to Mr. Maher consulting with the township?
It's not, that's why we're here.
No, that's not why we're here. You have also indicated, it's been indicated numerous times that discussions had been made with HR, legal, the supervisor, the building director with regards to an agreement with Mr. Maher and/or the process for which we see the future going for the planning department. I specifically asked the supervisor what, with regards to the agreement, what it was with Mr. Maher, because it was stated that I negotiated an agreement personally with Mr. Maher. And her email reads, there have been no meetings to discuss Patrick. Every other week I have staff meetings with building, engineering, and planning. Since Patrick's left, Jim has pretty much taken charge and is dividing up the workload as he sees fit. There is no agreement that I know of. There are numerous emails and communications to the supervisor, the human resources director, and legal counsel that discuss the agreement with Mr. Maher, that have attached the agreement with Mr. Maher for approval. Mr. Assorti had indicated he didn't have any problems with the agreement that was provided, so there appears to be an agreement that you were aware of that you're not aware of. I would like to know if we're moving forward, I would like to have a signed agreement with Mr. Maher that he's going to continue to do our daily planning in business. Also, and I want to ensure that we know who's doing our work as the planner falling under the supervisor's office with regards to an agreement. So I'm wondering how you didn't know we had an agreement that we have.
I don't know that there is an agreement.
It's right here, sent to you.
Signed
No, it's for your approval.
for my approval?
It was sent to Janet. I've reviewed this proposed contract. There is nothing in the language that is objectionable. This assumes that Patrick has agreed to and executed the previously prepared agreement relative to the use of township computer equipment. As a note, I have concerns about a few other things. From Jim Van Tifflin to Tom, as we discussed with Janet this morning, attached for your review is the draft agreement for Patrick, sent for his services. It appears there's been numerous discussions about agreements.
Never been signed.
Okay. With regards to the master plan, Mr. Van Tiffelen, if you can answer, it indicates in here that it's crucial that we get this consulting to assist with our master planning. Would we want to have a interim consultant work on our master plan? I mean, we've seen situations in other cities where that has gone awry. Is that even suggested?
I would not recommend it until you decide what you're going to do with the position. So if you're going to have somebody in-house, then as an in-house engineer, I would not want one of my master plans being done by somebody else, and then I got to live with it, because I'm going to amend it when I come in. So I would say if that is our intent, we set that aside for now, and we focus on getting somebody in here. If you're not going to fill the position and you're going to go with a consultant full-time, like we've had in the past, then whoever that full-time consultant is the one that you would want to do the master plan with, obviously, a lot of input from staff as well as board and planning commission and so on.
Okay. And with regards to advertising, I don't know if Mr. Maher can answer this question or not, but would you agree that all the places that the advertisements were put were sufficient? Or were there other recommendations? It sounds like Mr. Van Tiffelen suggested a headhunter of some sort, and doesn't appear that was utilized. If you don't mind coming up.
Madam Chair, if I may, point of order on that, Madam Posey, is that you're asking someone from the audience to make a suggestion on something or other like this. This whole thing is on whether or not, from what the letter reads, to give the supervisor a chance to get an interim consultant. That's all this is, nothing more. And we've taken this to a point of a continual discussion of no matter what, either the chair or either legal or human resources, we seem to be picking on particular people on this. That's all I'm saying. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Madam Chair, I'd like to thank Mr. Krasminski for reminding us of the agenda items continuously.
Yes.
But they are,
I'm just making you aware, Ms. Posey.
thank you, I appreciate that. But
Yeah, I
there's
appreciate that
discussion
too.
had, Mr. Maher is actually our interim planner. If he doesn't want to answer the question, maybe Mr. Van Tiffelen can, but I'm just asking, were the sites that it was posted at sufficient? I think we would all like to know that.
Go ahead, Patrick.
Thank you. Patrick Maher, 51278 Caroline, Chesterfield, Michigan, farmer planner. Yeah, you know what, I think that if they were posted everywhere that was named, they hit a broad spectrum of planners. You know, I think Jim had a pretty good idea with regard to the headhunter type activity, because right now you guys have an excellent salary, certainly great working conditions, and you know, I enjoyed working here, so I think you'll probably do fine if you go that route.
Great, thank you very much. That's helpful information.
Patrick? How far along were you with the master plan?
You know, I had Doug working on it for most of the time that he was here. My last review of it, I think it was, and I'll be honest with you, it's been a long time since I've looked at it, but it seems to me it was around 40-50% at that point.
Would it be difficult to pick up and continue on with that? Or would you have to start over from beginning?
Me personally? Yeah, I could pick up with it today and finish it up, but, you know, if you're going to hire someone, they'll probably want to use their own formatting, their own program, and so forth. So, you know, all of us do things a little bit differently and follow a different procedure.
Right. Okay, thank you.
Madam Chair, if I may, I'm happy that we're talking about master plan, Ms. Posey, because I've been talking to a couple of people, and I guess that's been an issue that's been going around where we should have moved further ahead and more quickly on master plan. And it's critical in order to have a vision of what you want to do with the township so that you can move forward. Everybody knows that. So I guess it's a little overdue. So I'm happy that you mentioned that.
It's certainly overdue, and I'm not sure that it had anything to do with me lighting matches, but I've worked my ass off for this township. I make no apologies.
Thank you, Patrick.
Thank you, Patrick.
Anyone else?
I just had another question. With Mr. Van Tiffelen, with regards to engineering, if you were to need consulting services, would you be the one that would seek consulting services and bring it to the board for approval?
Yes.
Based on your knowledge, qualifications, and education in
Yes.
engineering? Same with water and sewer?
Yes.
So I guess I'm confused as to why with planning, we wouldn't rely on Mr. Van Tiffelen or our interim planner to seek consulting on an as-need basis versus the supervisor, because I don't know what planning experience you have, but I would feel more comfortable with the interim planner or Jim Van Tiffelen, who has been operating both departments in the absence of full time, being the one to bring to us the necessities for consulting. That's all I have.
Anyone else?
Madam Chair, if I may, your letter that you presented, that you want to authorize yourself to negotiate an interim agreement with a planning consultant on behalf of the township, was your idea to continue those services with Mr. Maher, or were you looking at someone else?
I think we have to continue with Mr. Maher.
Okay, so that's what this letter was about.
That's what this was about, yes.
I see. Just wanted clarification on that. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Any other questions?
Madam Chair, if there's no further discussion, I would move on your proposal to authorize the supervisors to negotiate an interim agreement with the planning consultant on behalf of the township.
Motion by Mr. Krasinski,
I'll second that.
seconded by Ms. Nevers, to authorize the supervisor to negotiate an interim agreement with the planning consultant.
Madam Chair, if I may, I'd like to amend the motion, if possible, to include the language with Patrick Maher.
Okay, that's
Okay.
fine.
Thank you.
The language that it would be Mr. Maher?
Correct.
All in
I'll
favor?
amend my motion to include Mr. Maher, so Ms. Posey knows that it's correct on her minutes.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
It's the board should know, not Ms. Posey, Mr. Krasinski, and I'm kind of getting tired of your tone.
All in favor?
It should be the board.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed by saying nay. That motion carries.
Just for clarification, Ms. Nevers, you supported the motion, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Next, we have a Water and Sewer Department request to approve contract modification number 2 for sanitary sewer cleaning and AMP CTV investigation. Mr. Van Tiffelen, you're going to handle this?
Yes, in Mr. Wangland's absence. Madam Chairperson, members of the board, this is a contract modification number 2 for 2019 sewer cleaning and TVing project. Essentially what this is continuing some work that could not be done by last year's contractor and adding it to this year's contract. We finally finalized our contract with the previous contractor. They could not get this work done for various reasons, so we want to add it to this year's contract and have them complete the work. We need to get it done. So the amount of the contract modification is $15,000. Water and Sewer and Engineering are recommending approval.
Thank you. Any questions?
Madam Chair, on the recommendation of engineering, I move to approve the agenda item as submitted for $15,000 for CCTV investigation, job number 0249-0162.
Motion by Mr. Krasinski,
Support.
supported by Mr. Buzzino, to approve this contract modification. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed by saying nay. That motion carries. The next one is to approve construction payment estimate number 3 for sanitary sewer cleaning CCTV investigation project number 0249-0162. Mr. Van Tiffelen.
Yes, Madam Chairperson, members of the board. This is a progress payment for work completed through July 28th. We are recommending approval of payment in the amount of $92,017.04 to Pipe Tech. Water and Sewer and Engineering have reviewed it and are recommending approval.
Thank you. Any questions on this project?
Madam Chair, on a recommendation of the engineering, I move to approve this agenda item in the amount of $92,017.04 for project number 0249-0162.
Motion by Mr. Krasinski,
Second.
supported by Ms. Goodhue, to approve the construction pay estimate number 3. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed by saying nay. That motion carries. Next one is a request for approval to pay reimbursement request for a leaking water meter, and that's at 46123 Meadow Lane. Mr. Van Tifflin?
Yes, ma'am. Chairperson, members of the board. This is a request from the Water and Sewer Department to reimburse a property owner who suffered some damage due to a leaky water meter. The property owner provided an estimate to the township for the work in the amount of $6,313.56. Water and Sewer Department has reviewed it and is recommending approval.
Thank you. Any questions on this one?
Madam Chair, on a recommendation of the Engineering Department, I move to pay the reimbursement request for the leaking water meter at 46123 Meadow Lane in the amount of $6,313.56.
Thank you.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Krasinski, seconded by Ms. Posey, to approve this payment for reimbursement for a leaking water meter. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed by saying nay. That motion carries. Next is a request to approve construction payment estimate number 2 for sanitary sewer cleaning rehabilitation by FCIPP and SCIPP lining. Project number 0249-0163. Mr. Van Tifflin again.
Yes, ma'am. Chairperson, members of the board. This is pay estimate number 2 for this sewer lining project. This is for work through July 28th of this year. We're recommending approval of a payment to In Situ Form Technologies in the amount of $242,962.11. Be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any questions from the board?
Madam Chair, on a recommendation of the Engineering Department, I move to approve this construction payment estimate number 2 for sanitary sewer rehabilitation for FCIPP and SCIPP lining, project number 0249-0163, in the amount of $242,962.11.
Motion by Mr. Krasinski,
Support.
supported by Ms. Goodhue, to approve the construction payment estimate number 2. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed by saying nay. Motion carries. And the next one is a request to sign an engagement letter with Utility Financial Solutions, LLC. Mr. Van Tifflin.
Yes, ma'am. Chairperson, members of the board. It's that time of year that the township needs to look at the water and sewer rates. We have used Utility Financial Solutions the last few years, started with our SAW grant, and we've continued on the relationship. They provided a proposal that was included in your board packet for $13,000 to complete that rate design study, and that's for both the water and the sanitary sewer side. It has been reviewed by engineering and water and sewer, and we're recommending approval.
Thank you. Any questions on this item?
Madam Chair, hearing none, I move to approve the sign the engagement letter with Utility Financial Solutions in the amount of $13,000.
Motion by Mr. Krasinski,
Support.
supported by Ms. Goodhue, to sign the engagement letter with Utility Financial Solutions. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed by saying nay. That motion carries.
Madam Chairperson, one more thing for water and sewer that Mr. Wanglin asked me to mention. The last couple of meetings, we've had some reimbursement requests for some properties that had sewer backups due to a contractor's issue. This Pinnacle Woods subdivision. he wanted me to let you know that the township did get reimbursed, I think it was yesterday, with a check for basically $106,000 roughly. So we did get our money back for the money that the board had approved previously, so.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Van Tiffelen. Thank you, Madam Chair.
It's good news, Jim, thanks.
Now from the engineering department, we have a request to approve pathway abeyance for 54255 Foss Road. Mr. Van Tiffelen.
Yes, Madam Chairperson, members of the board. This is a typical request for some of our properties that are being split and combined in the north end of the township. This particular property is on Foss Road. There are no sidewalks in this area. They are requesting an abeyance. That we have granted several other abeyances in this area, and we are recommending approval.
Thank you. Anyone have any questions on this?
Madam Chair, I'll make a motion to approve pathway abeyance for 54225 Foss Road, parcel number 0810100015 and 0810100016.
Motion by Ms. Posey,
Support.
seconded by Ms. Goodhue to approve the pathway abeyance as requested.
Madam Chair.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed by saying nay. That motion carries.
Point of clarification. Did you say 016 or 17?
016.
Thought you
It's
said
15 and 16.
Yeah, I thought you said 17. That's why I asked.
Thank you. 16.
Okay.
Next, we have a request to schedule a public hearing for street lighting SAD resolution for the park at Legacy Estates, Phase 3. Mr. Van Tiffelen, we're just setting the date.
Yes,
September 11th is what you recommend?
that's what we're recommending.
Madam Chair, upon recommendation, I move to set the public hearing for September 11th, 2019.
Motion by Mr. Krasinski,
Support.
seconded by Ms. Goodhue to schedule the public hearing for September 11th. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed by saying nay. That motion carries. Next is another request to schedule a public hearing for street lighting SAD resolution for Twin Rivers subdivision number 2. And that's a date also?
Yes, same date as the previous one.
September 11th again?
Yes.
Very well.
Madam Chair, on the recommendation of engineering, schedule a public hearing for street lighting for this, also this for Twin Rivers on September the 11th, 2019.
Thank you. Motion by Mr. Krasinski, seconded by Ms. Posey to schedule the public hearing for this street lighting on September 11th. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed by saying nay. That motion carries. Next, we have a request for variance from engineering standards for Clinton Macomb Public Library, the North Branch. Mr. Van Tiffelen.
Yes, Madam Chairperson, members of the board. The Clinton Macomb Public Library is requesting a variance from the engineering standards that requires that all storm drainage be handled in an enclosed storm sewer system. In this particular case, for their theme for this project, they're going with more environmentally friendly type of a theme for the property. Obviously, there's a lot of nature that surrounds that piece of property, and they want to have the parking areas that surround the building a little softer. So they have proposed some green infrastructure, which essentially means that instead of the storm drainage going into a catch basin, it would go into a spillway, into basically a bioswale, they call it, which is a little wetland that cleans the water before it goes into our pond that's across the drain from the rec center. So right now, our engineering standards don't allow for this, so this would qualify for a variance. We've reviewed it. We're recommending approval because of the unique nature for this site. I don't anticipate having an issue with any other developers wanting to do the same thing, because these things tend to be a little more maintenance intensive than a traditional storm sewer. So we're comfortable making the recommendation. Be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any questions about this variation from the standards?
Madam Chair, hearing none, I move on the recommendation of engineering to go ahead and approve this variance for the Clinton Macomb Library North Branch.
Motion by Mr. Krasinski,
Support.
supported by Ms. Nevers, to grant this request for the variance. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed by saying nay. That motion carries. Next, we have the Parks and Recreation Department, and this is regarding the phasing of the new park, which is at the corner of 24 Mile and Foss Road. And Mr. Van Tiffelen is going to handle this one also. Thank you.
Yes, Madam Chairperson, members of the board. Back in June, the Township Board had approved the initiation of the 24 Mile and Foss Road Park project. And that was to be done in two separate phases. So at the time, we had some idea of what the extra cost would be for separating those into two basically separate bids. After we started to do some additional research on how we were going to actually pay for it, bond it out, Finance contacted the bonding agent to discuss how we would go about doing that. We have found out that it would cost in excess of $100,000 for us to have two separate bond issues, and it would have to be separate if they're separate projects. But he also indicated to us that it might affect our bond rating if we had separated these two. So what we've decided to recommend to you tonight, after meeting with the three full-time elected officials, is that we take the two projects and combine them back together to try and save that, $300,000+, with the caveat that when we do go out to bid, it'll be one bid, we'll have it basically subdivided. So the contractor will be instructed that they have to build that dog park area first, the pickleball area, and that small parking lot at the north end in that northwest corner first, while they're building the rest of it. So that will be done first, and then the rest of it will continue on. There may be some things that they have to do on both sides, of that essentially fenced area. Once that northwest corner is done, they'll fence it off, and then they'll build the rest of it as, they can, weather permits and equipment is available. Obviously, we've got a splash pad going in there, and that has a long lead time. So that's what we're recommending tonight, is to take the two projects, combine them together with the understanding that we'll get the northwest corner done as soon as possible.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, if I may, a question for legal. Tom, would the motion be to rescind the previous motion on doing it in two phases and then get a second on that? Would that be the correct way to do that?
I don't think you have to, Jim, and you can chime in. I don't think you have to rescind the previous one. I think you can go ahead and prove this as a corrective nature.
So just do it as make a motion to correct the previous motion.
Yeah.
To redefine it, to do it in one phase.
I think you can do it to revise it.
Okay. I just want to make sure that, once we do that, make the motion so that it would be proper, one way or the other. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Madam Chair, if I may, I know there's been a lot of frustrations, especially from the pickleball community with regards to getting these courts implemented in our township. We share it. We're trying to make it work as well. Property became available after we had originally made decisions on the pickleball courts, but we are actively trying to get these parks completed in an effective time so that you can get to these courts and utilize our parks. When this was brought to our attention, obviously our first intention was to get the pickleball courts and the dog parks in as quickly as possible, because it's been a huge demand from our residents for about 3, 4, 5 years now. So that was our intent, obviously, but after further review, when it goes to the bonding and they expressed to us that it's gonna cost an additional $300,000 to do it, that's difficult for us to go that path as well. So we did, work it out with Mr. Van Tiffelen to make arrangements to ensure that the dog park and the pickleball courts were the first part of that project, so we can get them in as quickly as possible for you. I just wanted to let you know that.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Madam Chair, hearing none, I would make a motion to rescind the previous motion and to, if I'm, listen to what I'm saying, Tom, so I can get it right. Should I say rescind the previous motion, or just make a motion to go ahead and do it in one phase?
revise the previous decision and move forward with one phase.
Okay. I'd like to revise the previous decision and move along and get it into one phase of doing the park.
Motion by Mr. Krasinski. Support. Supported by Ms. Goodhue to proceed with this project in one phase. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed by saying nay. That motion carries. Next is professional engineering services proposal for the same park. Mr. Van Tifflin.
Yes, Madam Chairperson, board members. As we'd indicated in June when the board made the initial decision to go forward with the park, we'd indicated that we were going to obtain a proposal from Fishback, who performed the preliminary study to actually design the park. We got delayed a little bit because of the whole issue with phase 1, phase 2, that kind of thing. So they have provided us with a proposal that matches the motion that the board just made as one project. Their cost, the total cost of their services, and this would basically get us through the bidding phase of the project. So it's all the design work and preparation of the bidding documents. And that's in the amount of $513,700. And they would be able to initiate the project right away as soon as the board grants this approval. So we're recommending approval. Be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any questions on this?
Madam Chair, hearing none, I would move on the recommendation of the engineering department to go ahead and go and use Fishback, Thompson, and Carr in the amount of $513,700 for the new Foss Park.
Motion by Mr. Krasinski.
Support.
Supported by Ms. Goodhue to enter into the contract with Fishback, Thompson, Carr, and Heber for engineering services. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed by saying nay. That motion carries. Next, we have a request for a charitable gaming license. Mr. Pierce.
Madam Supervisor, I feel kind of like the guy that's breaking up Jim Van Tifflin's perfect game. Before you have what we have as a standard request for a charitable gaming license, this is an organization, Ryan's Case for Smiles, which is a nationwide organization but is based in Wayne County. However, state requires that when they seek broad solicitations from across the state that they try and be recognized as a charitable entity in as many organizations as possible. They meet all the requirements from the IRS and as far as the state's concerned and what they require for paperwork to be submitted for them. And once again, this is an organization that supports children with cancer. And from our aspect, they've met all the requirements.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, if I may just add to Mr. Pierce up there that their 10th annual Miles of Pillowcase Smiles sewing event will be on Saturday, September the 14th of 9 to 3 at Trinity Lutheran Church at 45160 Van Dyke. It's on the corner of Hall Road and Van Dyke. So if anybody would like to attend this, I think it would be really nice of you to do that.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Any questions?
Yes, Madam Chair, if I may, I would like to make the motion that for the request for charitable gaming license. I am personally knowledgeable about this charity and have our Kiwanis group has donated to them many, many times. And also, it's really interesting to go to that sewing event. You would not believe how many women sit there, bring their sewing machines, and they are there the entire day. And it's incredible.
Yeah, they'll make upwards of 800 pillowcases at the event.
Yes.
Pretty impressive.
So that was kind of a long motion, but I'd just like to, I would just like to, the motion for us to accept a charitable, for a charitable gaming license. Thank you.
Second.
Motion by Ms. Nevers, seconded by Ms. Posey to adopt the resolution for a charitable gaming license for Ryan's Case for Smiles. Ms. Posey, would you call the roll?
Yes, Madam Supervisor. Trustee Nevers?
Yes.
Trustee Posey? Yes. Trustee Bussino?
Yes.
Trustee Krasinski?
I'm sorry I didn't make the second one. Yes.
Trustee Smith?
Yes.
Treasurer Goodhue?
Yes.
And Supervisor Dunn?
Yes.
Thank you, board members.
Really, this resolution is adopted.
Janet?
Madam Chair.
I know they asked for donations of fabric also, so I wanted to throw that in. Okay?
Yeah. The last item is a request to begin the recruitment of a senior appraiser. Mr. Sordi.
Madam Chair and members of the board, earlier this week, the assessor approached me with notification from the senior appraiser that she was going to be retiring. Her last day of employment will be September 13th, 2019. The assessor and I had some discussions, both in the need to immediately fill the position and to take advantage of the courtesy that the employee has provided to us for staying on for a month to help and assist and make sure that the new person learns the position, given the technical aspect of what's involved. So I appreciate that you allowed this to come on the board. That helps us help the assessing department make sure that goes on. So just to be clear, it is under the MAPE MTPEA agreement. That provides for a posting procedure because there are individuals within our township that are eligible for promotion process under that contract. And so we would post it first for the 7 days under the terms of the contract. And then if for some reason it's not filled from that promotional process, we'd ask with that you approve the human resources to continue the recruitment process so we can move it along. But with that, I'd ask for authorization for the Human Resources Department to post the senior appraiser position pursuant to the MAP MTPEA agreement, and otherwise further recruitment as necessary. And I'll be happy to answer any questions anyone has.
Thank you. Anybody?
Madam Chair, hearing no discussion, I move to allow Human Resources to go ahead and actually authorize them to go ahead and find a senior appraiser.
Motion by Mr. Krasinski,
Support.
seconded by Ms. Goodhue to begin the process for hiring a senior appraiser. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed by saying nay. That motion carries. Now we come to public comments. This is on non-agenda items. If you wish to speak, please come to the podium, state your name. Remember, there's a 3-minute time limit.
My name is Roger Krasinski, 11661 Parkin Lane, Fenton, Michigan. My name is Roger Krasinski. I am the son of Trustee Roger Krasinski of the Macomb Township Board, who is seated up to my right. The reason I stand here is to address the egregious and irresponsible accusation leveled against my father by board member and resident Timothy Bussanow on the Facebook page, Macomb Township Voices. His accusation is that, and I quote, Trustee Krasinski was trying to convince board members to come up with a plan to restrict a resident's right to open carry. Now, if that were true, a reasonable person can only imagine the humiliation, the visceral and seething anger my father must feel right now that his only son, the man that bears his name, would appear in front of his constituents, in front of his peers, with an open carry firearm. According to Tim Bussanow, this would be a direct violation of what my father wants to restrict. I do not see any anger or humiliation, and neither does anyone in this room, because it does not exist, just like the truth in Tim Bussanow's accusation does not exist. My father took an oath in 1959, to serve his country in the United States Navy. An oath to protect our country in lockstep with the laws of our Constitution, which contains our Bill of Rights and Second Amendment. The document I hold here is his honorable discharge from the United States Navy upon a successful completion of his watch over our country. This verifies, it is evidence, it is proof that he executed the duties honorably and without incident or violation of his oath. My father has taken an oath to discharge the duties of office as he has been elected over 10 times, spanning over 30 years of public service. His numerous re-elections are evidence proof of the public trust in his ethical and lawful governing. In those 30 years, Mr. Krasminski has never, not once, been convicted of restricting rights of any citizen. It defies belief, reason, and a basic level of intelligence that Trustee Krasminski just arbitrarily and for no reason decided to devise a diabolical plan to break his oath and restrict the Second Amendment rights of an innocent resident. In my opinion, it is more likely that Tim Bussino used this resident, who is exercising his constitutional right, as a pawn to launch a baseless and false accusation against an elected official, a citizen, and a veteran of our United States military. I will leave that up to the residents to decide. The underlying right guaranteed by our system of democracy that my father has defended and is fully entitled to is the right that every man and woman is innocent until proven guilty, and the accuser alone bears the burden of proof. This means for an accusation to be true, it must be proven by either a preponderance of evidence or beyond a reasonable doubt. If it cannot be proven, then it is not true. Mr. Bussino, in light of this information, I believe the residents here tonight, as well as across this entire township, deserve to be provided with evidence to validate your claim, to prove that it is true. Is there a secret video?
Mr. Krasminski, your time is up.
Can I do one more sentence?
Sure.
Thank you. In closing, my father tried to convince the board members to restrict a resident's right, as you stated. Then here tonight, will the board members, in front of all of us, rise and affirm in the positive that your accusation is the truth, to corroborate your story? My gut feeling is they will not, and I would truly respect their decision not to, should they so choose. Thank you.
John Parkinson. My address is on file at the clerk's office. The last Board of Trustees meeting, I asked Mr. Assorti a question. Mr. Assorti, do you recall that question? Okay. I said, you don't have to answer that now. I wanted you to have time to reflect on the actual question. Are you a public official or a public figure? That was the question to you, was it not, sir? I like to read what constitutes a public official, public officer, public figure. A public official is a person in a position of official authority that is conferred by governmental body, whether the position is elected or appointed. Public officials include elected officials, appointed officials, public agency members, or other acting under official right. A person holding a public position appointed or elected in order to prevail in a defamation action must show actual malice on the part of the defendant. A public figure is as defined. A public figure is a person such as a politician, celebrity, social media personality, or a business leader who has a certain social position within a certain scope and a significant influence, and so is often widely concerned by the public, can benefit enormously from society and is closely related to public interest in society. Mr. Assorti, you have been hired or appointed to be the general counsel to the residents of Macomb Township. You also have been hired to do the job of human resource director, in which myself and many residents believe is a conflict of interest. Recently, you had a legal firm draft and send a letter to one of our residents on, probably more residents, on your behalf that their First Amendment right to free speech be limited. In the letter, it claims that you are not a public figure. If this in fact is true, why are you on the stage with our elected officials tonight? In what capacity do you sit up there? Mr. Assorti asked my question at the last board meeting. Are you a public official or a public figure? You can answer the question now, sir. I'll wait.
This is not question and answer. This is your time to address the board.
And I'm addressing
Thank you.
a member.
Thank you.
And when my time is up, I'll...
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Anyone else?
Good evening again, Frank Kuzmano, 16188 Jenny Drive. I want to compliment Mr. Van Tifflin. He's always been competent, polite, and professional. He is a real asset to this township. I wanted to talk about monopolies and how the board has encouraged and forced us into monopoly situations with the police protection, water, sewage, and street lighting. But I want to talk about associations and what was said about associations and how they were denigrated in Macomb Township. Associations are nonprofit corporations. When a sub goes in, the restrictive covenants are placed in the title work. They are templated documents usually. They provide for boards of directors to be elected and assessments by the elected boards. If dissolved, they can be reformed by any member of the association and by court order. Mr. Van Tifflin said the subs are platted without associations. How many are there? I would suspect there's very few and that they are rare. Now, there were some comments made by Treasurer Goodhue regarding basically that there's so many deadbeats in Macomb Township that they can't be trusted to handle their own financial affairs. I found this insulting and disrespectful. I want Ms. Goodhue to drive down 25 Mile Road and look at the subdivisions in the common areas that are controlled by them and maintained by them. Is the grass cut? Is it fertilized? Are the trees being maintained? Who do you think you're talking about? You're talking about residents. My subdivision is not only well run, we have put money into CDs. We are not children that can't be trusted with handling our own affairs when it comes to saving us money. This is the point. Every bad decision that this board makes, every inefficiency this board makes in decision-making processes, which does not bring value to the taxpayers, is money that can't be spent to save for our children's college. It can't be spent at the local Dairy Queen. It can't be spent on savings for retirement. All these things have an impact. And Utility Financial Solutions, which will be dealt with next meeting, is going to be another opinion that all the rates need to be raised and jacked, user fees rather than consumption, so no matter how much we conserve, we still have to pay more for less. And that's the point, isn't it? I'll discuss at the next meeting the monopolies that this board has roped the township residents into. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Good evening. My name is Kathy Western. Can we talk about risk management? Would any of you have to look at the township website, or do you know where risk management falls? According to the township website, risk management falls under human resources. On July 10th, the Michigan Occupational Safety and Health Administration conducted an inspection of several areas of the township. All of you were sent a copy of this report by July 22nd. It is a lengthy report with a number of findings that are classified as serious. One of those findings concerned the makeshift offices used by a supervisor and a clerical staff person in a pole barn. The inspector noted gas-powered machinery, fuel, pesticides, and herbicides were stored in this structure. It is considered a high-hazard area. It lacked suitable multiple exits. It lacked a lighted exit sign for the one exit, which happened to be blocked on that particular day when inspected. Now, you have all received a copy of this report. There's more details. I won't go over them now because you have seen them. But why are the employees still assigned to work in those spaces? When I asked, I was told that the employees didn't mind. It is not lost on us that the management style here has been characterized as conquer and control. And when you have that kind of atmosphere, it's true, you don't get employees complaining very much, if at all. We would be interested in hearing tonight why those employees were left there. You've had the report since at least July 22nd, if not before, and my understanding is that they are still there. My understanding is further that you did not involve our own fire department to inspect that either before the employees were assigned to work there or afterward. And contrary to what residents or businesses would have to get a certificate of occupancy, there was no building department involvement. There was not a fire safety inspection, and they're still there. Thank you.
Ms. Western? Ms. Western, those items were all corrected and the employee was moved today. Thank you.
Mark Grabo, address is on file. Well, apparently, it's pretty sad that it took that long for that to occur. Shame on you. You are the supervisor. You are responsible. You need to answer to OSHA for that. I wasn't even stepping up over that. That's just an embarrassment of this township and your hand at controlling it. Now, let's go back and let's think about this. The four of you that have been on this board for quite a long period of time, excessively too long, and a lot of the residents completely agree with that. You guys sat here for years. John Brogowitz was the world's best thing since sliced bread. Direct quote, Miss Nevers.
That is true.
Good. Then stand your ground. An HR director and an attorney, and Mr. Assorti, it has nothing to do with you or your name or what you represent. It is the combined positions. They do not belong together. I am sorry. All four of you served with me. All four of you know the facts. How many times we sat in that back room. How many times Mr. Brogowitz walked us through numerous things. How many times Mr. Dolosky, prior to Mr. Assorti, would argue with Mr. Brogowitz. And they came to an equitable resolution because those two had the knowledge together that we hired them for. We did not depend on one person. I understand it cost us money. Miss Goodhue, you are a woman of information. You sat here and said we had no one qualified. My God, is Mr. Gelios a complete fool when he stands up here and says 67 people applied for the HR director position? Please go back and watch the tapes. You ought to be ashamed of yourself. I'm embarrassed that you actually sat there and said that. 67 people applied. There had to be somebody decent enough in that position. Come on, people. You guys are embarrassing this township. This is a shame. You got 3 new members sitting up here that have a lot more intelligence and a lot more smarts at the information that they're coming out with. Miss Smith has to come forward and have direction given to the attorney to update, and the HR department to update policies. Ms. Dunn, you do realize that's your job, right? You are the director of the township, day-to-day operations. Run the business. Stop playing the game unless you have time to do your hair and nails like you've offered numerous people.
Anyone else? Very well, we will move on to trustees' comments.
Yes, Madam Chair. First of all, I want to address a comment that was in public comments. Actually, I want to thank everybody who comes to the podium, resident or non-resident, to engage themselves in our township. I want to give some context to some comments that were made. I did go online, and I made a comment that referred more to what I thought was an inappropriate, not thought, was inappropriate discussion. I put this online. I left closed session last meeting. I was called back in by one of our trustees with a finger, said, hey, we got something else to talk about, which closed session had been adjourned. This board, since I've been on it, once has been found guilty, or I don't know, I know some don't like the term guilty, but we were found to be in violation of closed meetings, right? Now, there's another suggestion that we may have violated Open Meetings Act again. So last meeting when I got called in, and the topic was a resident who was open carrying, that was inappropriate. We had quorum, we had already adjourned closed session, there should have been absolutely zero discussion, and there was a plan. And I will go on record with that. I'll take a lie detector that there was a suggestion that another entity was going to address it. And I will stand behind that statement. And I will scream from the mountaintops when this board doesn't do things that they're supposed to do. I have taken oaths too. I've taken 2 oaths. One as a teacher and one as a board member to follow the Constitution, not only of the United States, but of the state of Michigan. I am not going to violate closed meeting acts again. I'm going to try to do everything I can. I have voted twice, I think, not to go into closed session. I've sat out of a closed session. And for the topic of me to get called back in, the topic is to address someone who's open carrying was wrong. It was illegal, probably. It violated state statutes. And I had every right to go online and announce that. I think this township would be in much better shape if other board members for years would have announced when we violated the law. And I'm going to stand behind that, and I'm not going to back down from it. And I think everybody up here knows what's happening. I'm not going to put on the spot, but I would love to go through every board member and talk about, was that a topic that I got called back in with a finger to address somebody who was open carrying? And I don't even care if it was open carry or if it was a sidewalk issue or if it was a 7-Eleven not having the right sign up. I should not have been called back in to discuss any topic that was not on a closed session agenda. That was the intent of my email. And I have to do this. I have to protect myself because I don't always get the best advice up here about when we're going into closed session, when we're not supposed to be going to closed session, or discussing quorum when we're not supposed to discussing quorum. So the topic just happened to be open carry, but that is not the spirit. It's not the intent. And I have to address that. I am not going to be called back in to a room to discuss something that's not on closed session agenda out of view of the public. I'm not going to do it. So that's my response to that. Thank you. So,
Madam Chair.
I'm not done yet. I'm not done yet. I got a couple more things you can respond to that. I wanted to echo our clerk's comments about pickleball. Pickleball's huge, and I've been saying it for a very, very long time, and I want you guys to have those courts, and I think you know everything that's going on with it. I have relatives that play it. I have some of my former colleagues who are retired teachers that play. I've been very consistent with that. So we got to get these pickleball courts moving. The only other thing I want to say is to all the township residents and families who started their fall activities, whether it be football or cheer or band or soccer or golf or tennis or, I know I'm going to miss something, lacrosse, cross country. It's a big commitment. This is a very, very active township and as far as athletics and extracurriculars at the high school level. So good luck to all of you and congrats to everybody who actually made tryouts this week. So thank you.
Madam Chair, I'd like to address a comment to Mr. Graybow and thank him for his virtue signaling because you must be without any problems at all. Must be nice. Now, I'd also like to correct the record because I'm sure Ms. Western will come back and try to rip my lips off at the next meeting because I said I voted to have Patrick be our planner. It was a straw vote, an oral approval on my part to the people that asked my opinion. So I'm correcting the record. Thank you.
Madam Chair, I'd like to, first of all, thank my son for coming up here. I would like to respond to the remarks that were posted on Facebook on Macomb Township Voices by Mr. Busno on July 25th of 2019. Mr. Busno posted that I attempted to violate the Open Meetings Act and tread on a resident's rights. The only statement that is true on his Facebook post, and I quote, "Last night I had exited closed session and I was almost ready to sit in my trustee seat after the board adjourned closed session. Then Trustee Krasinski waved me back to the boardroom. This was highly unusual." This is the only accurate part of his comments. Everything stated after that is untrue. When Mr. Busno came back into the room, I said I talked with the sheriff and he will find out who the individual is that in open carry. In no way did I say he could not open carry. I never tried to convince board members to come up with a plan to restrict a resident's right to open carry. I would like for Mr. Busno, if he posts anything, to get the facts correct and not make them up in his head so he could post fictitious lies. I served in the Armed Forces of the United States, and I served in the United States Navy for 4 years. I raised my right hand and stated that I would give my life for this country. I would give my life to defend this nation and the Constitution, and especially the Second Amendment, a well-regulated militia. Being necessary to security of a free state, the right of people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. I understand oaths. I also understand codes that all military personnel live by: duty, honor, and country.
Mine too.
These words are very important to me. I live by them. When I became a trustee, I took an oath to uphold the Constitution of this state. I also took an oath of marriage that lasted 46 years before my wife and friend went to eternal peace in 2013. I am part of the Vietnam Veterans Group 154 Honor Guard for the past 10 years that performs military funerals. This premier group has performed all over Macomb, Oakland, and Wayne counties. We ensure when the honor guard arrives at that funeral that we give their respective families closure. We fold the American flag that drapes his or her coffin. We do a 21-gun salute and then play taps. I am part of that detail and have performed all 3 of those rituals. The Vietnam Veterans Group 154 honors all armed forces of the United States and gives our fellow armed brother and veteran the proper burial. I also pick up flags that residents leave in this lobby and take them to the Vietnam Group 154 for proper disposal. I have been part of the detail of burning flags. After all I do for the Vietnam Veterans Group or the oaths I have taken, why would I be against the Second Amendment? One last question. If you thought I violated the Open Meetings Act or the right of a person to open carry, why didn't you say something when you came back in open session that night? I would also like to address the people in the audience that are in open carry mode. You had earlier heard my position was on open carry and your Second Amendment rights. You were brought here under false and fake postings on the web. This is something you'll have to deal with Mr. Busno. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Madam Chair, I do want to add something to that. No, Mr.
Madam Chair,
Krasinski
point of
asked me a
order.
question.
Can I?
He asked me a question. All right, okay.
Can I please ask Ms. Smith if she has anything?
Okay.
I have nothing, Madam Chair, thank you.
Madam Chair, okay, the only thing I want to say to that, and this is the one thing that did go online that wasn't completely true. We left the room very quickly, okay, because there was one point our general counsel did tell us it was probably inappropriate talking about this, and the general counsel did make a comment, he didn't see a problem with the open carry. So I have issues at times, sometimes with Mr. Sorty, but I do want to correct that. We left very quickly when we heard what the topic was. It never should have been called into that room for any topic that wasn't on closed session agenda, any topic.
Treasurer's comments.
Before I give my good news, I want to say that we were not in closed session. Closed session was adjourned, and we were on our way back, so we were not in closed session.
So we were in quorum then?
Excuse me. I have been remiss, I've forgotten to bring this up to the residents, because I know the residents are interested in this, but the U.S. Department of Justice, by direct deposit, remitted the $66,000 due to Macomb Township on June 21st. This was after the Department of Justice determined that Macomb Township was the victim of extortion and bribery related to a business transaction. But the money is in our account. Thank you.
Clerk's comments.
Thanks, Madam Supervisor. That's great news. I'm happy to hear that we've got that money back in our accounts. Mr. DeCaro, I know I don't want to put you on the spot, but if you could just answer a question. One of the residents brought up the other property that we have around in Macomb Corners and the other areas that we may utilize for these pickleball courts. Could you just, we have looked into it, we have addressed it, so I just want him to explain it to you, why it hasn't worked out for something that we can do right now.
Yeah, a couple things. I want to apologize for my voice. I had some surgery done. Well, one thing, the one property that keeps coming up is Macomb Corners Park. Macomb Corners Park is pretty much maxed out for everything that we would put there. The one thing that we could look into, but I don't believe the arena, the roller rink would be big enough for a couple of courts. We can look into that for temporary courts, possibly. There's been a lot of suggestion next to the rec center on the west side of the parking lot. We don't own the property on the west side of the parking lot. Okay, there's other plans for what's going to happen by the pond and the other portion of the park. So again, we feel everyone's frustration also. We try to accommodate the pickleball players the best that we can, but we will look for a couple of alternatives. We made some alternatives at the new park to give them more pickleball courts to combining the tennis courts. So again, we're trying to do everything we possibly can.
Also, there has been discussion about taking the skate park and turning it into batting cages, which would better suit all the
that would be a much better
facilities.
use for that.
Okay.
Also. And keep in mind, when it was first brought up to put pickleball at Macomb Corners Park, a lot of the pickleballers said it would be too hot there. There's no shade of where the roller rink is right now.
Okay.
So that would be the main reason.
I hope that answers your questions to that.
I'd be happy to answer some questions after.
If you want, Mr. DeCarlo's available if you have further questions for that. Also, just to the board members and to the public, you may have noticed a change to the agenda. We are rolling out the software that was purchased, the agenda software. So if you could just be patient with us, we're getting through some of the kinks and the glitches. But so today, this agenda was the first one that we rolled out. We will be shortly training all the board members on how they can implement it. It's going to be very user-friendly for them and hopefully to our audiences that review these agendas on a regular basis. Thank you.
Under Supervisor's Comments, I have 3 items I'd like to bring to your attention. The first one, I would like to form a committee for developing an RFP for trash hauling. Right now, we have a year and a couple months left on this particular contract, but being that the last one took so long, I don't want to wait till the last minute and then start negotiations with whatever company. So I would like to form a committee to develop a RFP or whatever they decide to do for trash hauling. If there's any volunteers, please let me know.
Madam Chair, you can go ahead and put my name on for that.
I'll volunteer as well.
All right,
And if you need a motion on that, I would make the motion
sure.
to form that committee.
Anyone else?
Will you be on the committee, Madam Chair? Will you be, or you're looking for another third other than
I'm
yourself?
looking for a third.
Okay.
Yeah,
I'll volunteer to be on the committee.
okay. I think 3 is sufficient. So, Mr. Krasinski, if you want to make the motion.
Could I suggest that with the purchasing specialist, could we add that person?
Well, yeah,
for-
but
sure,
I
once
was,
we have it?
well, when she comes on board, because it'll be more like, we'll need finance, and we'll also need some other people on there, and even legal, to go through some of what's gonna happen in there, seriously,
Okay.
because that's how it usually happens.
Okay,
Just
I
to
just
make you
wanted to
aware.
make sure, because
Yeah,
with
no,
writing the
seriously.
RFP, I would prefer to have somebody who has experience doing that.
I agree.
Okay.
All right, were you going to make a motion, Roger?
I
or
did.
not? You did.
Yeah, and did
Motion
you second?
I'll second it.
Okay.
Unless Ms. Posey
Motion by
wants to.
Mr. Krasinski, seconded by Ms. Nevers, to form a committee for RFP for trash hauling services consisting of Nancy Nevers, Roger Krasinski, Christy Posey, and the new purchasing agent.
And
All in
anyone else?
favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All
Aye.
opposed by saying nay. The next one is a committee for the community center. Mr. Krasinski brought this up probably 2 meetings ago, and I think we need a committee for that also. So if I have any volunteers,
Go
Karen?
ahead, Karen.
Anyone else?
Roger said too.
I'll volunteer.
Kathy?
Kathy?
No, Roger.
No, I'll volunteer.
Okay,
Okay, do you have 3?
I have 2.
2? I'll volunteer.
Okay. You want to make a motion for that?
I'll make a motion to form a committee to study the new community center going in.
Okay. Motion by Mr. Krasinski,
Seconded?
seconded by Ms. Nevers, to form a committee to look into possibility of a community center consisting of Karen Goodhue, Roger Krasinski, and Nancy Nevers. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed by saying nay. That passes. The last thing is a park name for 24 Mile and Foss Road area. A descendant of the Foss family lives in the area, and she has donated several articles from the family. Now, our past history has been to name the park by location rather than family names. So right across the street on 24 Mile is the Whitney Macomb Cemetery. Previously, research was done, this is several years ago, and turned up a Whitney living in California that might or might not have been related. When he was contacted, he replied he had no relatives in Michigan that he knew of. So I think it would be my suggestion that we go with the Whitney Park.
I like it.
Madam Chair, if I may, also, I think in the cemetery better, there is the Foss. There is a Foss that's buried in the cemetery. There are also some Civil War veterans that are buried there. And also you have the Troop family, T-R-O-U-P, and they have the highest
Yes.
stone that is in there right now.
Right.
And, I agree with you as far as the Whitney, because that whole area there of the person that donated it back in 1854 is the person that was there. So it's really, it's kind of cool.
So I don't know if we need a motion for that,
I'll make
or-
that oh, go ahead, Karen.
I like the combination of Whitney Macomb, just like the cemetery,
Okay,
myself.
you making that a motion?
I'll make a motion that we name it the Whitney Macomb Park.
Okay. Motion
second
by
that.
Ms. Goodhue, seconded
second
by
it.
Ms. Nevers, to name the new park on the corner of 24 Mile and Foss Road, the Whitney Macomb Park. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed by saying nay. That motion carries. That concludes the business for this evening. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So
So,
moved.
support.
By Ms. Posey. Who said that?
Krasinski.
Posey did it, and I support it.
I'm sorry. Motion by Ms. Posey, seconded by Mr. Krasinski. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed by saying nay. We are adjourned.